All right, my friends, let's talk about injuries. I recently have received my very own injury, and this is what happened. So, as you can see, I hit the ground really hard on my elbow. So what really happened is that it just jammed my shoulder essentially up into my body cavity. It was not fun. So, once I got over the initial impact trauma of the elbow, then the shoulder injury started to kind of present itself. And so it's not a major injury, it's just one of those little nagging injuries. So here's what typically happens with injuries. People tend to get nagging injuries. That is a slight injury like the one that I just received, but then they just kind of ignore it. And then so as the time progresses and they continue to use that joint or that area in whatever activity that they're doing, then that tends to become a chronic injury, and then that just becomes a huge problem later on. So then when that client comes into me and then they say, oh, I hurt my hip, or I hurt my shoulder, or I hurt my elbow months ago, then that means more work for me and a longer recovery time for them. All right, so here's what I noticed. Once the inflammation and the initial trauma of my elbow started to dissipate, my shoulder really started to hurt. So what I did was a self-assessment, and I did that with the shoulder car. So a shoulder car is you're gonna bring that bicep up to your elbow, and then as you come behind you, you rotate that thumb in and down, and then you're going to reach those fingers towards the wall behind you, and then continue that rotation with the back of the hand resting by the thigh, pinky facing forward. From there, you reverse, palm reaches up towards the ceiling, rotate thumb up and out, bicep by the ear, and then palm back down by your side. So what I noticed is when I got up to here, which is shoulder flexion, I started to have a closing angle pain. So what closing angle pain means is that as you bring any joint into flexion, this angle here is the closing angle. And so when you have closing angle pain, that means that you have something going on within the shoulder capsule. So here's what I started to do in order to rehab my shoulder. So when you're rehabbing and you want to do this, you want to seek out professional assistance for this, whether it's a PT or a movement specialist or a chiropractor, whatever you're looking for, then they're going to give you a set of movements to do in order to rehab yourself, okay? And so what happens is when you're injured, your training frequency should increase substantially, meaning that you should be training your injury 2 to 3 to 4 times a day. And so here's what I was doing. So when you have a capsule issue in that joint, you want to start out with small circles, and you want to go just underneath the point of pain, okay? Meaning, so if your pain level is here and you're doing your rehab exercises, you want to go to the point where you're just about to feel the pain and then back off. That's the range of motion that you're using, okay? So what I started off with was axial rotations, all right? So I had a 5-pound weight. I would hold it out here, and I would rotate my thumb on its axis down towards the ground. And once I hit that in range, I would just come back and reach that thumb back and down best I could, and then come back to normal. So I would do 3 sets of 5 reps on each side, because you don't want one side stronger than the other just because you're rehabbing it. All right, so once you've warmed up with the smaller circles, then you want to go to bigger circles, okay? So what I did here was I got my crossover symmetry bands. You want to cross them just like this. You're going to get some tension on the band. You're going to keep your elbows level with your shoulders, and then you're going to rotate into external rotation just like that. And so like I said, you're staying just underneath that level of pain. Okay, so once you get to here and you're like, oh, that hurts, then you're just going to come back and you're just going to do that smaller range of motion to facilitate that strength that you need to get inside that joint capsule. Okay, so what I did next is focusing on internal rotation. All right, so we're using a concept here called eccentric neural grooving. So what I did was I got a dumbbell, I put my elbow level with my shoulder up on the rig here, making sure that your chest is in line with your upper arm. I use this hand to push my arm up, and then I slowly lower as much as I can until, like I said, I start to feel that pain, and then I back off a little bit, using that assistance to come back up. slowly lowering down. Just like that, all right? So that's what I did there. So we did small circles with axial rotations. We did big circles with the crossover symmetry, focusing on external rotation. And then we used the eccentric neural grooving to focus on internal rotation of that shoulder. So that pretty much encapsulates the capsule of the shoulder. Okay, so then the next thing you want to focus on is the pec, all right? So you have three parts of your pec. You have the middle portion, the upper portion, and the lower portion, all right? So you want to do each one of those movements. I was using flies because it's a big movement, encapsulates the whole entire range of motion of that pec. So I was coming down, coming towards the middle, and then coming up, all right? So you want to use load that is very manageable. You don't want to feel fatigued. You don't want to feel sore because, like I said, you're upping the intensity of your training to 3 or 4 times a day in order to rehab that shoulder. So the reason why we're focusing on the pec is because it attaches right in here in the humerus. Okay, so that's a major shoulder stabilizer that we need to be focusing on. All right, so the next thing I focused on is shoulder blades. Okay, so then what we're doing is scapular cars, and we're just doing any way that we can. So I was using the resistance of the crossover symmetry bands to squeeze those shoulder blades together, shrug up in the ears, push forward into the face, slide down away from the face and squeeze together, and then reversing, pushing forward, shrugging up, back into your ears, and then sliding down. All right, so then you want to focus on your traps. Okay, so that's another one for the crossover symmetry band. All right, so you want to get a lighter one than the ones that I have here. All right, so what we're doing is we're just going to pull here. That's the middle part of your trap. All right, you pull down, that's the upper part of your trap, and then you pull up, that's the lower part of your trap. All right, so that's really important shoulder stabilizers as well. So far we've gotten the rotator cuff, the pec, and the traps, and then you want to do the lats, all right? So the lats are just any kind of row, any kind of pulling pattern that you're pulling your elbow down to your hip. That's going to activate the lats. And then so everything that you're doing is making all those smaller muscles more stable and a lot stronger, all right? So like I said, you're doing this 3 to 4 times a day, and so you want to be doing a lighter load that's not going to fatigue you, all right? So that's it for what I'm doing for my personal shoulder injury. And like I said, I'm attacking it when it's a nagging injury so that it doesn't become a chronic injury later on, and then eventually just an injury. We don't want injuries, all right? So that's it for me today. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.